Audit. Uh, it's video number 54, and we're on the 30th of January, and we're going to get right back into Fraser's testimony here. He says, you didn't see the president's car at the time you heard the sound? No, sir, I didn't. But you stood right there, did you? Right. Stood right there where I was. And Mr. Shelley was standing there? Right. And also Billy Lovelady? Yes, sir. The three of you didn't go any place. I believe Billy, and then walked out towards that direction. He means where the shots that they heard at the grassy knoll. But I didn't. I just stood where I was. I hadn't moved at all. Did you see anybody after that come into the building while you were there? You mean somebody other that didn't work there? A police officer? No, sir. I stood there a few minutes, and some people who work there, normally started to go back into the building because a lot of us didn't eat our lunch, and so we stared back into the building, and it wasn't but just a few minutes that there were a lot of police officers and so forth all over the building there. So what's interesting about this, and we're going to hear from Billy Lovelady, and we're going to hear from William Shelley. Nobody sees Oswald standing on the steps. So there's no prayer man. I hate to say it. I love Daily Plaza UK. They're really good. Got some great photos. Got some really good detailed videos. But I'm sorry, there is no prayer man. Okay? Oswald was on the first floor lunch room, or domino room, and then he went upstairs to the second floor. Okay? He wasn't standing behind William Fraser. If he was there were probably 10 people on those stairs. One of them would have saw him. Especially Bill Fraser, who was standing on the second step down. And when you look at the photos of Prayer Man, he's standing on the first step just to the Will Fraser's right. Okay? So there's no way that Oswald could have been on the stairs right there in the front and no one would have saw him. Somebody would have saw him, at least one. Anyway, keep going here. Let's see. Then you went back into the building, did you? Right. And before you went back into the building, no police officer came up to the steps and into the building. Not that I know. They could walk by the way, and I was standing there talking to somebody else and didn't see it. Did anybody say anything about what happened? Did you hear anybody say anything about the president being shot? Yes, sir. Before I went back, some girl who had walked down a little bit further where I was standing on the steps, and somebody come back and somebody and said somebody had shot the president, or President Kennedy. Do you know who it was who told you that, sir? Do you know who the girl was who told you that? She didn't tell me right directly, but she just came back, and more or less in a low kind of hollering, she just told several people. Right. No. Then you went back into the building, did you? Right. And the police officers came in there? Yes, sir. I would say by the time, some of us went back in, it wasn't just a few minutes. I say there were several, but you stayed on the first floor? Well, stayed on the first floor there a few minutes. I hadn't eaten my lunch, so I had my lunch down there in the basement, and I went down there to get my lunch and eat it, and I walked back up to the first floor there. When you came back into the building, you came in the front door, didn't you? Right. Did you go down to the basement immediately, or did you stand around on the first floor? No, sir. I stood around for several minutes there, and then, eventually the ones who hadn't eaten their lunch, some of them hadn't taken their lunch outside. So this conflicts with what he says in his sixth floor museum statement. okay, that he went down to the tracks or towards the tracks. Then he came back to the stairs, stood on the stairs, and then he went over to the corner of Elm and Houston. And at Elm and Houston, he's standing around for probably 10 minutes after the shooting, he says. And then he sees Oswald come off the loading dock on the back of Houston, come up Houston to Elm, cross Elm, and walk up Elm. But here he says he went back inside, stood around close to Mr. Shelley's office, chatted with other people, and then went downstairs and got his lunch. So it's very confusing what he's doing here. All right. See, because he just said, so I had my lunch down there in the basement, and I went down there and get my lunch and eat it and walk back up to the first floor there. It says, when you came back into the building, did you go down to the basement immediately, or did you stand around on the first floor? No, sir, I stood around several minutes there, and then, eventually the ones who hadn't eaten their lunch, some of them had taken their lunch outside. Did other people go downstairs with you? No, sir, they didn't. You went down alone, did you? Yes, sir. Did you go at any time to the back end of the building near the door to the loading dock? No, sir, I never did. Perhaps I better ask you to point out on the map where you were. Come on over here, please, okay? You came in the back into the building? Right. Tell us where you went and what you did. Well, I said I came back through here, and by coming back through here, you mean you came down the hallway and into the entrance into the first floor warehouse. So again, let's bring out our diagram here. Hold on one second. Alright, I can't get this to come up, but what he's saying is on the steps here. Here it goes. Hold on one second. Technical difficulties, we'll just forget about that. It says, right, and you come by Mr. Shelley's office. That's the counter right there. After you get in, you get off here. That is the office. Anyway, right out, I come out around here, and we're several people walking around. That is the bin area. No, sir, the bins don't start automatically here. I say there is a little bit more or less haul through here. But anyway, I say you have 2 or 3 bins. Through here, you mean there is sort of a hall after you enter into the warehouse? Right. From it, after you come past the encounter, you have several rows of bins coming this way. But I say right after you get past, say, this last bin right here, running that way, right out this general area here, you have a telephone and everything out in here. Well, you indicated that everything that would be in this line, the bin lines, would be clear on the first floor. Right, beyond here. Did you ever go into the area where it was clear before you went downstairs? From the time you came back into the room, did you go down into this area where it was clear before you went downstairs? No, sir, I didn't go in here. I was right over here. So what they're trying to get to is to figure out if Oswald is back there in that back part of the first floor, and would he have seen him? Now, hold on one second. Alright, so this is what Fraser's talking about. He went through these doors. There's Mr. Truly's office. There's Mr. Shelley's office. Here's the domino room. The back stairs would have been here. I think these dock doors had to have been open because Oswald would have come down, gone through this dock door, and he's in the clear onto Houston. If not, he would have had to come out here in the open and come out to the door here. Anyway, let's keep going. Alright, let's see. We can skip down something here. So he's standing around talking. And you never went back to work? No, sir, we didn't. I didn't work anymore that day. You stayed there on the job until you were told to go home? Yes, sir. What time did they tell you to go home? It was between 1 and 2 there sometime. Roughly. I don't know what time it was. So again, that kind of conflicts because you've got this, statements from the police saying they took down the names of everyone coming out of the building and their phone numbers and addresses, but that wasn't until about 3 o'clock. Anyway, had the police officers come in there and talk to you. And again, at 1 o'clock, the police are just barely entering the building. Okay, the crime lab doesn't even get there until after like 1:05, and they don't even find the rifle until 1:25. So if they let everybody out between 1 and 2, okay, they're letting out potential suspects that could be still in the building. Anyway, yes, sir. They come in and talk to all of us. They asked us to show our proper identification, and then we had to write our name down and who to get in touch with if they wanted to see us. Did they ask you where you had been at the time the president passed? Yes, sir. They had. I told them I was out on the steps there. Ask you who you were with? Yes, sir. I told them, naturally, Mr. Shelley and Billy vouched for me, and so they didn't think anything about it. Said, did you hear anybody around you asking for Lee Oswald? No, sir, I didn't. At any time before you went home, did you hear anybody ask for Lee? No, sir, I don't believe they did because they, like one man showed us, we had to give proper identification, and after we passed him, he told us to walk on to the next man, and we, put down our proper information where we could be found, and if we wanted to see you and talk to you anymore. And then we went up to the little bit more in the front entrance toward Mr. Shelley's office there with another man and stood there for a while, and he told us all that we could go ahead and go home. Then you went home. Then you went on home? Right. Representative Ford, did all this occur after you finished your lunch? Yes, sir, it did. Did it ever occur to you at any time following the shooting there was something connecting the shooting with Lee Oswald and the package? Well, I say not particularly, not at the time. I didn't think anything about it because, to be frank with you, some were over here, 1 or 2 would be over there talking and just strung out here on the first floor, and I didn't think anything about it. And I see some of the guys, they go out for lunch and they come back 12:45, so I didn't know whether he had went out for lunch or not. Some of them do every week. Did any of the policemen infer with other efforts to go inside the building eventually come down the basement where you had your lunch? No, sir, they didn't. Before you left, did you look for Oswald to see about taking him home? No, I didn't, sir. Was there some reason why you didn't? Yes, sir, I did. Because, like I told you, he was going home to get the curtain rods, and I asked him at the same time, it would be, let's see, about that, would he be going home with me on Friday afternoon like he was doing? And he said no. So naturally, when they let us go on off, because I thought maybe they had already dismissed him, and he went on home. See, it's interesting because, again, he says 40, 50 years later that he sees Oswald come out the back of the building, come up Houston Street, and go up Elm. But he figured he was just going for lunch. When you talked to him on Thursday and he told you he wouldn't be going home on Friday, did he tell you what he was going to do? Why he wasn't going home? No, sir, he didn't. Did you talk to him again on Friday morning as to whether or not he had changed his mind? Did he ask you Did you ask him whether or not you could pick him up at the end of the day? To be frank with you, Mr. Ball, I'm not sure whether you did or not. Did anybody tell you that Lee Oswald was missing before you went home? No, sir, they didn't. Could you describe for me the commission whether you went on the 6th floor that morning in relationship to the overall picture of the 6th floor? Yes, sir, I could. Would you do so, please? Yes, sir. Do you have a piece of paper I can draw? Would you mark Houston, Elm, and other streets? This is Houston, this is Elm right here. Anyway, like I said, I won't draw the buildings. I have these 2 elevator shafts here. Quickly, you come off the elevator shafts right here. We have skids with books on them. And you see on those skids, you would have some shelves right here about like this. And so I merely walked over to the elevator with the 2-wheeler we used on the dock and walked somewhere, say maybe halfway, not quite halfway there, and put up some books. Put them down on the floor there and the floor level. And so I just turned around and come back to the elevator and come on down, and I went about my business. He had me putting up books there on shelves. Representative Ford, from this point here, could you see the windows or the area of Houston and Elm in the building? No, sir. You could. Let me see. Yes, sir. You could. I would say could look down and see this area back over here. Did you look over there? No, sir, I didn't. Right on down there, I knew where the books went normally, and I didn't have to look around. I say I was going to get through. If you're not familiar with these books and so forth, it would take you a little longer to find and put them up. But if you know where they go, you can put them up very quickly. So I knew this book went into this shelf because the book, we don't handle very many of them, and that is where I put the books. You don't handle very many, you put them in the shelf. So I put the books in the shelf and turned around and put them in the elevator and come on down. Mr. Ball, can I have you marked? Can I have this marked as Commission Exhibit 368, the diagram just drawn by the witness to illustrate this work on the 6th floor? It may be marked. I have here Commission 163, a gray-blue jacket. Do you recognize this jacket? No, sir, I don't. Did you ever see Oswald wear this jacket? No, sir, I don't believe I have. No, sir, I don't believe I have, because most of the time I notice when Lee had it, I say he put off his shirt and just wear a t-shirt the biggest part of the time. So really the shirt he wore that day, I really didn't see it or didn't pay enough attention as to whether he did have a shirt on. On that day, you did notice one article of clothing, that is, he had a jacket. Yes, sir. The color was, what color was the jacket? It was gray, more or less flannel, wool-looking jacket that I had seen him wear, and that is the type of jacket he had on that morning. Did it have a zipper on it? Well, it sounds to me like Lenny Mae Randall, that the gray jacket that they found in the domino room, that they're showing Lenny Mae Randall and they're showing Frazier, is not the jacket that Oswald was wearing that morning. So they're trying to say that Oswald left his jacket, which is quite interesting. All right. Yes, sir. It was the one of the zipper types. It isn't one of the 2 zipper jackets we have shown? No, sir. So he just says it's not the jacket. Wow. Do you know what kind of trousers he had on? What color? Not that day. I don't remember. You wouldn't remember that day? I had seen him wear some gray ones before. Here is Commission Exhibit number 157, which are gray trousers. Had you ever seen him wear these? Yes, to be frank with you, I had seen something more or less of that order, that type of material, but so far as that, being sure that was his pants or some of his clothes, I couldn't be for sure. Here's commission number 156, which is a pair of gray trousers. Did you ever see him wear gray trousers of that type? No, not that I know of. You're not able to tell us anything or able to tell us, describe any clothing he had on that day except this gray jacket. Right. So I find this interesting that, I mean, think about it. If you saw someone of your coworkers and he wore a jacket or pants on a day 6-7 months before, and then they showed it to you again 7 months later, would you be able to identify that or remember it? I know I wouldn't. So, quite interesting there. All right, let's see. That is the only thing you can remember, right? I have a paper sack, which is commission exhibit 365, the gray jacket you mentioned. Did it have any design in it? No, sir. Was it light or dark? It was light gray. You mentioned it was woolen. Yes, sir. Long sleeves? Yes, sir. Button sleeves at the wrist? Or do you remember? To be frank with you, I didn't notice that much about the jacket, but I had seen him wear the gray woolen jacket before. You say it had a zipper on it. Yes, sir. Now, we have over here exhibit for identification, which is 364, which is a paper sack made out of tape. This is the fake. 364 is the fake package. Remember this. Some sort of homemade affair. Will you take a look at this? Does this appear to be anything like the color of the sack you saw on the back seat? Yes, sir. I would say it was. It was more. It was more a color like this. It was more like this color. Correct. Now again, if Oswald had any kind of defense lawyer, they would be jumping up and down, protesting the fake bag and all this craziness of the fake evidence being introduced by the commission. But again, Oswald didn't get it, or his lawyer didn't get a chance to object to this. So they're presenting this to witnesses, presenting this to the jury, which is you, and there's nobody objecting to fake evidence. All right. Did it have tape on it, or did you notice it? Well, like I said, I didn't notice that much about it, as I didn't see it very much. Will you have a look at its length? Does it appear to be of the same length? No, sir. Will you just use this? Was this the end of the sack over, folded over? Do you remember that? Well, you know, see, the reason why he's saying no, sir, because they made another bag 40-something inches long, and the bag that Frazier saw was 24 inches. So that's why he's saying no, sir. And of course, they quickly changed the subject again. You just used this. Was the end of the sack turned over, folded over? Do you remember that? Well, you know, like I was saying, when I glanced at it, but I say from what I saw, I didn't see very much of it. I'd say the bag wasn't open or anything like that where you can see the contents. It was going, if you was going to say putting to more or less a person putting in carefully, he would throw it carefully, you would put it more towards the back. If he had anything folded up in it, I didn't see that. When you saw him get out of the car, when you first saw him get out of the car before he walked, you noticed that he had the package under the arm? Yes, sir. One end of it was under his armpit, and the other he had to hold his right hand. Did the package extend beyond the right hand? No, sir. Like I say, if you put it under your armpits and put it down normal to the side, but on the right hand side, was it on the opened? Was it on the end or the side of the package? No, he had it cupped under his hand, cupped in his hand. Right. So again, Oswald is shooting, or excuse me, Frazier is indirectly shooting holes in the rifle in the package theory by saying no, he had it under his armpit and cupped in his hand. 24 inches, not 41 inches. Right. Take a look at this bag, which is Commission Exhibit 364 for identification with reference to the width. Was the bag about the same width or different width? See how they have to change the subject again. You see? Well, I would say it appears to me it would be pretty close, but it might just be a little bit too wide. I think it is because, you know, yourself, you would have a big hand and that size of package. It was cupped in his hand because I remember glancing at him when he was walking up ahead of me. Now that makes sense because if you've got this 364, which has no rifle, no curtain rods in it, it's going to be flatter, therefore wider. All right, let's see here. This is another bag here, and which has been marked Commission Exhibit 142, but I don't see the stamp on it. This is FBI number 10. This was shown to you before, wasn't it, in Dallas? Yes, sir, it was. You were asked, yeah, this is the original bag that they supposedly found on the 6th floor. You were asked if you had seen this before, weren't you? Yes, sir, I was. When you first saw it, you felt that the bag you saw was of a different color, didn't you? Right. And I say, they told me this one had been treated in the lab. You see how he leads him with the questions? It's basically, Mr. Ball gives the statement that he wants him to confirm. Instead of letting Frazier answer the question, it's just yes, right, no, wrong, stuff like that. Let's see. It will be noted that there is part of the bag which has not been treated. Yes, so I will show you this part of the exhibit that has been treated and tell you whether or not the paper, the color of the paper that has not been treated, is it of or not the similar color to the paper of the bag you saw in the back seat of your car that morning. To be frank with you, more like, I say the color I saw would be more like it, but I imagine that it hadn't been run through that process that this color that you unwrapped would be more closer to. This seems to have a little bit different color to me. So even 6 months later, Frazier's able to identify the difference between the color in the bags. So again, just as a reminder, the reason why the color is different than the bag Frazier saw is because the FBI had treated the entire bag with a chemical that would bring out any fingerprints on the bag. They weren't able to find any fingerprints on the bag. Okay? So, again, how does Oswald carry this bag cupped under his arm? He's obviously grabbing the center of the bag to carry it also to the car. He was holding on to one end of the bag, according to Lenny Mae Randall, and dragging the bag across the lawn. So how would Oswald's fingerprints not be on the bag? What that says to me is that the bag that was found in the corner is not the same bag that Oswald brought to the school book depository. Okay? That's what that says to me. And again, people seem to forget. They're like, well, where's the curtain rods? How come there were no curtain rods found? Well, if you can plant a fake rifle, if you can plant a rifle to implicate someone in a murder, you can definitely leave, and you take the rifle that shot the president, you can definitely take the package, okay, that Oswald had with the curtain rods and his fingerprints on it. You can definitely take that with you to hide that evidence. Okay, so let's not be confused here that the bag with the curtain rods, it's pretty obvious to me that the bag with the curtain rods that Oswald dragged across Lenny Mae Randall's lawn and put into the back seat of Frazier's car and then carried into the school book depository, cupped under his arm, is not the same bag that the police found in the sniper's nest corner. It's a different bag. Even Frazier is saying this, okay? And again, if you took the paper from the downstairs room where the paper was at on that, and made several different bags and put curtain rods in one and a rifle in another, or just left it empty, it would be very, very difficult for someone who just spotted it for a few seconds 7 months before to recognize the difference. Because if, I'll put it to you this way, think about it like this. If the police, the FBI, can make a fake bag and enter it into evidence, okay, what is to say that the assassins couldn't make another fake bag, okay, and lay it in the corner for the police to find and call Exhibit 164 or whatever it was? And then the bag with the curtain rods that Mrs. Payne gave Oswald, they took. And then you have to say, well, why wouldn't they keep the bag with the curtain rods, okay, and leave it in the corner of the 6th floor and take out the curtain rods, okay? Because they noticed that the bag had grass stains and other things on it, and it was also shorter than the bag that was carrying the rifle. So they had to just take that bag and get it out of there. All right, so we're going to go into George de Mohrenschildt, and we'll continue from there. All right, so we're back to de Mohrenschildt and his insights on Oswald, and also his wife Joan's insights. You know, I have to say that the Oswald that we get through the eyes of Joan and George de Mohrenschildt, and this is why it has to be, I think it has to be real. It has to be something that's true. It's not made up, because you can hear them kind of almost sparring back and forth, talking about Oswald off the cuff. You know, it would be very difficult for two people to coordinate a conversation if they were lying and just talk off the cuff like that, some kind of practice thing about a lie about what they saw about Oswald. So it sounds to me, because they're both speaking off the cuff here, uncoordinated, it seems like, that they're talking about an actual Oswald they observed. Now this, if you had just taken George de Mohrenschildt's testimony and Joan's testimony of Oswald, and in their insight is enough to say, you know, to make me believe that Oswald is not working for anybody. He's not an asset of the government, not working for these right-wing groups, nothing. He's a nobody. He's a loser. He's a disenchanted, utopian-seeking person. Okay, I'm not going to say socialist, Marxist, communist, but someone who had his ideal, disenchanted with the U.S., went to the Soviet Union and found out his ideal wasn't perfect. And that's always the way it is, you know. Most people want to live in their idea of the way things really are. And then we find out how reality is. You know, it's like, it's like your movie star. You know, you want to live in your fantasy of how this person is, or a politician, how wonderful and caring and kind and everything they are, and then you get this Access Hollywood video of them cursing everyone out on the set or behind the scenes or something like that, or they get arrested for beating their wife or some crap like that, and it blows your ideal. You don't want to believe that person that you had built up in your mind could be like that. And it's the same thing with Oswald. See, I think this is what's happened to Oswald. He's gone to the Soviet Union, and he's realized that the people of Russia are just like the people everywhere else, but it's the government that's corrupt, just like it is in the United States. Okay? So he's come to a realization, and we all come to this realization, especially when you get to be my age. You you come to this real politic of the way things really are. You see things the way they really are. This is my curse, is that at my age, I always see things in people exactly the way they really are. They may try to fool me for a while, but eventually I can always spot them, and I can always break it down to who someone really is. You can't fool me. You know, Trump fooled a bunch of people. I knew who Trump was. I knew, who Trump was from the very beginning. He didn't fool me. You got some idiots out there, ignorant people, that, he says a few lines and sounds good, and he's going to change this and he's going to change that, and he's just saying shit, talking shit. He ain't going to do shit. And we saw the results. He didn't do shit for nobody. All the people he said he was going to help, he didn't. He just helped the same people that been helped before, the rich. Okay? So this is the reality. It's the real politics that Oswald has come to reality in the very early age, that there is no paradise. I just got through watching Logan's Run, and the central computer is obsessed with finding this sanctuary, and the runners are obsessed with finding this sanctuary, but Logan 6, or Logan 5, or whatever his name was, realized and came to the reality there is no sanctuary. It is what it is. There's no place to run. You have to deal with what happens right there in front of you. And this is the reality that Oswald is coming across. Now, the conspirators really screwed up. I think they should have never brought Oswald to New Orleans. Okay? They should have left Oswald in Dallas. Okay? And his story would have been much easier to frame him as a disillusioned person that was trying to kill all politicians. But they take him to New Orleans and try to treat him as this person, that was revolutionary. And we hear from de Montchild, from George and Joan, that he's not a revolutionary. He's a realist. He realizes that the communist and the capitalist system is both corrupt. Okay? How can you have a revolutionary that's fighting for the communist system if he says to de Montchild that the political meetings were, horrible, and that, the politicians were just as corrupt, the leaders of Russia were just as corrupt as the politicians in the capitalist system. So you have a guy who's basically come to realization, in the middle, that both sides are corrupt. You can't have a revolutionary communist that's willing to take out the capitalist leader, if he's that way. So no, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they had to bring Oswald to New Orleans. Yeah, I guess you could look at it actually both ways. They had to bring Oswald to New Orleans to have him put out papers for the Free Play for Cuba committee, and to get in fights in the streets of New Orleans and get beyond, espouse his views on. Yeah, they had to do that, because the Oswald that de Montchild's talking about is a disillusioned Oswald, that can't stand both sides, the revolutionary Cuban movement, the communist movement in Russia, and the capitalist system. So yeah, no, I take that back. They actually did need to bring Oswald to New Orleans to put a different face on Oswald, because the people that knew Oswald in Dallas, the de Montchild, saw him as disillusioned. Anyway, we'll keep going.
Harder for him.
Yeah, thank you, John. Thank you. Very clear. Yeah, George.
So after we found out the situation in Minsk, how was life in Soviet Russia, how they got married, our interest in Lee and Marina Oswald remained that we only wanted to help them. My philosophy is in life not to bend in front of the strong people and be nice to the poor, as nice as I can. If they annoyed me, I did not show it, because it's like insulting a beggar. So if sometimes Lee annoyed me, I didn't show it to him. Well, this week, from then on, I think we should start now on, if we have time, on...
Again, you got to ask yourself why. Okay? Why would someone keep going back and getting abuse from someone unless they had an alternative interest or job, I guess you could say? All the other ones were fleeing Oswald. All the other white Russians couldn't stand Oswald. They felt sorry for Marina. They're giving her dresses and clothes and baby stuff. But when it comes to Oswald, they don't want to have anything to do with him. Okay? But the Morningshield keeps going back for more. Again, it's like the janitor insulting Elon Musk and talking about how bad he is and the rich people he's hanging out with are bad. After a while, Elon Musk is going to stop hanging out with that janitor. But yet, the Morningshield keeps coming back to Oswald. Why?
We can start.
On the element, on the chapter F, the increasing, which I called increasing animosity. The increasing animosity which existed between Lee and Marina Oswald, and I think we showed it in the previous chapter, how it slowly developed. Looking back and remembering Lee's relation to other people, I must admit that he was rather standoffish, spoke civilly only to people who happened to be of interest to him and whom he liked, and these were not many. He mentioned very rarely his mother, never criticized her, but neither had he any kind word for her. Neither did Marina. We have never met Lee's mother, but we admire her efforts, as awkward as they may be in trying to clear up the name of her son. We wish her the best of luck in these endeavors.
Again, let's think about this. De Mornschild, okay, was completely opposite than Oswald. He was hanging with the rich people. Jacqueline Kennedy, who would have been Jacqueline Bouvier, used to sit on his lap when he was, when she was younger. He was friends with Jacqueline Bouvier's family. Like I said, these rich people, they all hang in the same circles. Eventually, if you're in the same city, all the rich people are gravitating toward each other, okay? Now, I've been around rich people, and I know that all these people aren't hanging around each other because they love each other, okay? And they're not, there's usually 2 reasons or 3 reasons why rich people are hanging around each other, okay? Number 1 is connections. Who among this group circle of rich people, and usually in every city, there's about 1,000, I'd say movers and shakers, probably a couple hundred, and then you've got some hanger-ons, and you got family and stuff like that, and you've got people trying to move upward, but usually it's a couple hundred. And they're usually hanging with each other for about 3 reasons, like I said. 1 is who they can use or get other business deals to go through, okay, or complete a business deal or project they're trying to complete, okay? Another one is they're looking to check their competition. So if you're, in real estate construction and you're hanging out with other real estate construction guys, you're not doing it because, we're all sharing business interests. You're trying to see what they're up to so you can check them and advance your cause, okay? So it's kind of a two-way street. You're looking to expand your business and use those people in there to do that, but you're also looking to check your competition. Another reason that a lot of rich people get together is to have solidarity among the elite against everyone else. Okay? And what I mean is that, you know, if you've got union problems with your construction company and you've got union problems with your, I don't know, newspaper publishing company, you can find a solidarity in that by who you're hating. Solidarity in hating, okay? Or opposing. So that's what's going on there. But with, again, de Mohrenschildt, you have to wonder, Oswald, in that White Russian group, in that group of rich elite, is going to be the person they're watching out for. Okay? Is this guy dangerous? Is he going to come shoot at us? Especially after Walker got shot. Is he going to try to shoot us? Is he just some raving lunatic that is harmless? So you got to understand what de Mohrenschildt's doing. Not only is he reporting back to his handler, he's also reporting back to his other rich folks. Yeah, Oswald, he's a loser. Nothing to worry about. Things like that. Alright, what's going on here? I'm going to jump forward because there's no sound.
But
There we
that
go.
child amazingly just slept right there with her. And whenever she gets up, then she feeds the child. But child also very often was kept up very late. So maybe that was the reason that the child could sleep longer in the morning.
Lee was not the average, eager, go-getting type of a person, like his brother Robert. And he did not admire such people. I often thought it was a pity Lee did not have a better education. He might have done well in the scholastic world, and would have made a useful citizen. But fate was not to be kind to him. His relations with Marina worsened every day now, and Marina began to ask my wife for a permission to spend a night with us, or some time with her without Lee, with us without Lee. She confided in her unhappiness of having been abused physically. She, by the way, when she stayed with us, wore my wife's silk nightgowns and sometimes spent the night on the sofa in our living room. She also took the baby to my daughter's apartment and found.
Now, you can see this as two ways, okay? And this is what, as I get older, I have to admit I start seeing things like this. I end up seeing things from very many different angles. And a lot of times, you know, when you're younger, you just like, boom, it's black and white, this is right, this is wrong. But when you get to be my age, I mean, you know the common things. Killing is wrong, stealing is wrong. But in other things, you get to be my age, you can see things from many, many different points of view and understand why people are motivated certain ways. Now, you can see that Marina is playing the sympathy card. Okay. Oh, poor me, abused wife. I'm from Russia. I'm not, I'm alone in this country. I don't know anybody and all those kinds of things. Or you could also see it as Marina, KGB asset, trying to infiltrate and find out more about this rich guy that's hanging out with her husband. Why? And these other white Russians. Why? She's playing the sympathy card. Oh, I'm abused. I got a baby. I'm alone. I don't know anybody. Oswald isolates me. To get into the de Mornschild's house and then snoop around, okay, and then report back. That's more information that she can report back to her handler, Aunt KGB. Okay? So you can see these things in different angles. Which one is real and what was the real thing that really happened, I don't know. Again, I find out as I get older that a lot of times things aren't either A or B or C. It's usually a combination of A, B, C. Okay? What I mean is that it's usually a combination of many different factors, and that you can't really pin it on one thing or another there. Like with de Mornschild and Joan, they may have initially started off as just reporting back to their handler, FBI, whatever, about Oswald. But later on, he, especially Joan, actually feels sympathetic towards Oswald and Marina, and develop a real friendship for them. Of course, this never would have evolved naturally without some incentive from their handler. Okay? They never, think about it. De Mornschild in the normal world would have never, ever, ever developed a relationship with Oswald unless he had some specific reason given to him by his handler. Okay? Again, it's like Elon Musk hanging out with the janitor, okay, or hanging out with the Wendy's fry cook or the Starbucks, barista. It's just not going to happen naturally, There's too much social pressure to hang out with people in your own group and to shun people outside your group. It was true back then, and it's true now. Okay?
Paramount. In the meantime, while all this was going on, Lee kept on working overtime, reading his Russian books, maybe sulking, but always proud, always meticulously honest, paying his bills and living like a hermit.
Do you get to what kind of books he was reading and all that?
Yeah, I think I should mention that whenever I saw Lee reading, he read Russian classics, which are difficult for a fellow who was not born in Russia to read. He read Turgenev, Pushkin, Dostoevsky, Gogol, Lermontov, liked Russian poetry, and took out of the library exclusively good classical books.
Did you say he also listened, for instance, to Tchaikovsky's Queen of Spades?
I think so. I think he had his favorite. That was his favorite.
So he did listen to classical music?
Yes. Yes, he liked classical music, and he liked Russian folk music, too.
Now, I'll be honest here. When I was 17, I read, Tolstoy's War and Peace, or I believe it's called War and Peace. Anyway, it's a book about that era of the Napoleonic War and how it involved Russia. And, this is a big, thick book. Matter of fact, my friends would always comment, wow, you're reading that huge book there. And I don't remember how many pages, but, it was probably 600 pages. Quite a haul. But that was in English. And I was 17, and that was difficult. Maybe 16, and that was difficult. But here is Oswald, supposedly ignorant, dumb Oswald, reading in Russian the same book. Why? He's not in Russia anymore. He's still in America. I think it was two things. Maybe longing for the Russia that he read about and idealized before he went there. And then also he was trying to keep up with these Russians in that Russian community, and he could have something intellectual, higher intellectual to discuss with them. That's what I think was going on. And again, you got to ask why. Why would you're working all that time, overtime, barely still making it. Why would you waste your time doing those things? Again, who knows? All right, so we'll switch over here and back into the legalese. Again, people do crazy things over fear. I mean, like I said, what other reason would Justice Warren, a champion of the rights of the individuals through the Brown versus the Board of Education, through the Miranda rights, what other reasoning would he find for sacrificing the individual rights, the constitutional rights of Oswald over the assassins? Okay? And like I said, there was that fear of nuclear holocaust thrown on him by President Johnson. And like I said, even the most ardent liberal, okay, faced with enough fear, will give up certain rights to guarantee his survival. Because survival is the preamount instinct among all human beings. It overcomes, every other instinct. Okay? You may want to help a homeless person, but if that homeless person turns towards you with a knife and starts slashing at you, trying to kill you, even though you just were offering him a hamburger, your first instinct is to protect yourself. And even though your second, third, fourth, maybe fifth instinct is to try to help the poor homeless, self-preservation is the number one goal. Okay? And what we find in all of the agencies in the U.S. government and all the individuals and all the people involved, that once they came across the truth, and believe me, they all came across the truth in the CIA, the FBI, they all knew what the reality was, that Oswald didn't do it and there were other people involved. They all knew, they all came across that, okay, reality. Because you can't have the the best investigative force in the world, the FBI, and the best intelligence gathering force in the world, the CIA, and them be completely ignorant and dumb to the facts that Oswald didn't kill the president. It was all self-preservation. The reason they turned their backs on Oswald, they turned their backs and let him be sacrificed at the altar of injustice, was self-preservation of their jobs, for their careers, their family, self-preservation of their agency where they worked at, self-preservation of what they thought was the greater good for the country. Okay? Fear that what would happen if they came out and admitted that, yeah, it was some of our guys in the FBI, it was some of our guys in the CIA that went rogue. Fear of the backlash. That, yeah, Oswald didn't do it, we know he didn't do it, but we were afraid of the consequences of what would happen to people in the agency, to the entire agency itself, and the backlash from the American public. So therefore, we went along, even though we found out later, we didn't know at the time, we found out later that it was all a lie. We allowed Oswald to be sacrificed at the altar of injustice for self-preservation and fear. Like I said, fear is the number one motivator for all human actions. Okay? It doesn't matter how liberal you are, how conservative you are. If the lion is coming towards you, it doesn't matter how humanitarian you are, you're either going to run or you're going to try to kill that lion. Okay? This is what they were facing. I'm not justifying it. I'm just explaining it. Because you have to, and then you have these assholes out there that run around going, oh, so you mean the entire government, the entire FBI, the entire military, the entire CIA was all involved in the assassination, in the plot to kill Kennedy? No, not at the beginning. It was a small group of rogue agents, rogue people connected with right-wing anti-Castro Cubans, Kennedy-hating mafia, Kennedy-hating oil men, people in the military that feared that Kennedy was going to hand over or was too weak or too ignorant enough to protect us from the Soviet menace out there. Same thing in the CIA and the FBI. So you had rogue elements like that just generally really hated Kennedy, that killed Kennedy, and they framed Oswald. You had other people around them that knew about it, or kind of knew about it, or had hints of it, but they didn't do anything, that fought to protect and cover up because they may have been dragged in with them. You had other people in the agency above those people, in the agencies, I should say, that found out later what really happened, and because of a sense of, like I said, self-preservation for themselves, their careers, and the agency, fought to cover it up and to stall everything. They were afraid of what would happen to their career, the agency, and even the country. There was real fear that if the CIA was dismantled and shattered into 1,000 pieces, that the KGB and the Russian intelligence and military would run roughshod all across the world and even into the United States. These fears were magnified, not diminished, but magnified with the anti-war protest against Vietnam, against the Vietnam War. Magnified because they saw all their worst nightmares coming true. There was a fifth wheel running around somewhere in the U.S., a communist fifth wheel that was against the war, against the government, against the presidency, And that just, you can't imagine the fear and the paranoia that ran through. This is why they went after, Garrison. They didn't go after Garrison because the government the CIA was all involved in the conspiracy. I think this is where Garrison reaches too far. I think they went after Garrison because, one, he was getting into areas of exposing their illegal activities or their intelligence activities and trying to eliminate Castro, and that was going to expose certain operations and methods and operators that were still operating. And then along with this anti-government, anti-Vietnam mentality that was protests that were going around, there were great fears about Garrison, inflaming that and making that even more real and more dangerous to them than it was. This is why Nixon's elected, is fear. The white middle class ran to Nixon, especially in the South, with Nixon's Southern strategy. They ran to Nixon out of fear, okay, that there was a communist fifth wheel running around the country paying for and fueling the anti-Vietnam War movement, okay? That all started back with Oswald. Like I said, it started off with Oswald. It was the cover-up was to protect the agency. Then there was real fear that there would be a great backlash. And then during the 70s, you see all this fighting against the House Assassination Committee because there was fear that, hey, we covered this up 10 years ago, and now it's all coming back to us. So they sacrificed Oswald's rights for the greater good, is what I'm trying to say. And this is not how America works. This is anti-American. This is against every tradition that we have. And I'll take it back to World War II. We locked up 100,000 Japanese American citizens who had never gone through their due process, never went through the court system to try to convict them. We just locked them up in detention camps out in the deserts in the central parts of the country out of fear. Fear that because they were of Japanese heritage, they would become a fifth wheel and join up with the Japanese against the American war effort. Okay? Fear makes people, you got a liberal Democrat, FDR, and no legislation was passed to do this. This was an executive order by a liberal Democrat, okay, who is pushing for equal pay, racial equality at federal jobs and construction, of war material. But yet, this liberal Democrat, out of fear, locked up over 100,000 Japanese American citizens without due process, threw the Constitution out the window. So if it could happen to them, it happened to Oswald too. Okay? This is what fear does to people. We can have all our ideals about liberty and justice and the American way and the rights of men and the rights of people and the Bill of Rights, but with enough fear, we can roll all that back to it's meaningless. Anyway, we'll continue with this tomorrow. I just want to read this real quick before I end. It says, Western Defense Command and 4th Army Wartime Civil Control Administration, Presidio of Monterey, or Presidio of San Francisco, California, April 1st, 1942. Instructions to all persons of Japanese ancestry living in the following areas. All that, gosh, this is hard to read, something of the city and county of San Francisco, state of California, rallied on the 25th, established the Juniper Sierra Boulevard, So they're going after the Japanese area of San Francisco. All Japanese persons, both aliens and non-alien, so that means people that are of Japanese descent who are citizens and not citizens, will be evacuated from the designated area by 12 o'clock Tuesday, April 7th, 1942. No Japanese person shall be permitted to enter or leave the above described area after 2 a.m. Thursday, April 2nd, 1942, without obtaining special permission from the Provost Marshal in the Civil Controlled Station at 1701 Van Ness. The Civil Control Station is equipped to assist Japanese population affected areas in the following ways: give advice and instructions on the evacuation, provide services with report to management, leasing, sale, businesses, provide temporary residences of all family groups. So here we have, now, no legislation was ever passed, no court case was ever brought. They weren't allowed to contest it or go to hire a lawyer to go to court. Their property was seized, their liberty was seized, their children were seized, and they were sent off to detention camps for the remainder of the war with no due process, no constitutional rights, no right to a hearing, no right, all their property was seized and sold. So they lost one of the main values, the main pillars of American democracy is having private property. Their private property, their businesses, their homes, their land, their farms were all seized and taken from them unjustly. They were never compensated, never given any money until like the 1980s by Ronald Reagan, after most of them were in their 80s or 90s and died. One of them we remember as a child, but he appeared later in his 20s on Star Trek as Lieutenant Sulu, I believe, recalls about his times in these internment camps. So here we have the premier democracy, the arsenal of democracy, defending ourselves against the fascist Nazis, the fascist militaristic Japanese, and people are fleeing to America to escape these dictatorships. And here we are, the arsenal of democracy, taking away the rights of the individuals without due process, without a court hearing, without compensation, just taking away their rights, not just asking them to leave, but also interning them, putting them in prison without a trial. Not from some legislation passed by Congress, but by an executive order by a liberal Democrat, that many thought on the right that was a communist, So how does something like this happen in America? Fear. Again, fear is the main root to every single human being in every society. Fear will make us do nearly anything. You saw what happened after 9/11. We've just been bombed at Pearl Harbor. The reason this was put into effect is because one of the pilots that was flying back from his bombing mission crash landed on a small island, a private island called Niue, just west of Maui. A worker there, two of them of Japanese descent, tried to help him, and he and those three together fought off the military that was sent there to capture him. And because those Japanese joined up of American Japanese joined up with this Japanese enemy who just got through bombing Pearl Harbor, it drove fear through the American government that, look, we've got 100,000, 200,000 Japanese Americans on the West Coast that could also possibly turn. And they convinced, through fear, FDR to sign an executive order, not pass legislation, but they signed an executive order to forcibly remove persons of Japanese descent who had been living in America for generations. You know, not that they just got off the boat. Some of them had been there since the 1890s, or parents were from the 1890s. American citizens, we're not talking people that crossed the border or flew in on an airplane and weren't have American citizenship. We're talking about American citizens, people born in our country, maybe 2-3 generations, had their rights taken away, their property seized and not compensated. They were sent off to internment camps, basically a prison camp, barbed wired. They couldn't leave, couldn't go anywhere. For 3 years, they were held until after the war ended, actually. Were never financially compensated. After they were released, they had no place to go, no farms, no property, no businesses, not even furniture to go back to. All their private property was seized. Their cars, their equipment for businesses, everything. These are American citizens. So if you think that, agencies and individuals inside the American government, once they found out that Oswald didn't do it, weren't willing to sacrifice this one individual for the greater good out of fear of their jobs, fear of the agency being destroyed, fear of supposedly America being destroyed from within, you got another thing coming. All you have to do is look back at what happened to the Japanese Americans interned. We're only talking 21 years before. 21 years before, that's it. And we can look back at even more recent examples. After 9/11, sneak and peek actions were put in with the Patriot Act, where the government could, if they thought that you were engaged in terrorism, could go into your house while you were gone, sneak around, look in your private property, your drawers, your personal effects, go through your bank account, go through your safe deposit boxes, rifle through your personal belongings, tap your telephone calls, all without a warrant, all without any probable cause before a judge. And then if they found something, then they could go to a judge and say, hey, we think there's something going on there. Then they would get a warrant and use that same evidence that they were able to get illegally to get the warrant. Of course, that was thrown out during the Obama administration, thank God. But the reason for that was fear. That by the time that we got around to getting a warrant, and that the insular capabilities of the Muslim community in America was such that we wouldn't be able to get someone to confess or to be a snitch, that the only way to protect America from another 9/11, supposedly, was to give up our rights, and the people willingly voted for it in Congress because, it's only going to affect Americans. It's only going to affect Muslims. Well, it didn't just go after Muslims. They use it to go after everybody. Okay? Everybody. Non-Muslims alike. So fear is the number one factor in all of us giving up our rights and all these things. And these are just some examples. But back to Oswald, again, why would people say, well, if there's really evidence out there, if there's really paperwork out there, why would they still be covering it up 60 years later? Why would the agencies give a damn about some guy who's already dead in their agency or some guy who's 80 years old fear that even if an investigation came today, that the outcry for dismantling of that unconstitutional agency that covered it up would be over the top? I personally believe in the American people that they have common sense and they wouldn't call for that. But when you're dealing with agencies that don't trust the American people like the FBI and don't trust the American people like the CIA, then we've got a different kettle of fish. Okay, I've gone way over my time. I got to stop now for good. All right.